Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the latest episode of Hedera's Virtual Meetup. I'm very excited to be joined today by MacDonald and Michael Lewellen from the 3iEIO team. Why don't you say hi, guys?
Howdy.
Hello.
Well, we're going to give people, just a minute or two to join the YouTube here. But we really appreciate everyone joining us. We have a lot of fun stuff planned for today's virtual meetup. Very, very excited to show you what these folks have been working on. And so for those who have not seen a Hedera virtual meetup before, if you have any questions throughout the live stream for either myself or the 3iEIO team, please feel free to put your questions in the YouTube chat and we'll answer them either as we go or at the end, we'll save about 10 or 15 minutes for some live Q&A. So very excited and thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll give people maybe 2 more minutes to hop in here. How have your guys' days been?
Wonderful.
Pretty good.
Wonderful. How about you, Cooper?
I'm doing well. We have a lot of exciting things that we're working on in the Hedera community, and it's always great to be able to get familiar faces on the live stream.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, yeah. Pablo and Tanner, thanks for joining the YouTube chat. We appreciate you dropping in. Cool. Give people
Hello, Pablo.
another. Do you guys know Pablo?
I do know Pablo. We had to compete in the last hackathon.
Oh, yes. That Pablo. Yeah,
that Pablo.
Cool. Pablo asked how exciting. It's very exciting. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in Hedera land.
Definitely.
Cool. So we're getting more people joining the YouTube chat. So I think that it might be good to just kick off this virtual meetup. Like I said, very excited to be joined today by MacDonald and Michael Lewellen from the 3iEIO team. Mac, would you like to start us off by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background?
That would be awesome. I would love to. Thought you'd never ask. Yeah. Hey, how's everyone doing? Thank you guys for joining us this evening. It's wherever you are at. It's evening for us. So I am Michael MacDonald, known as Mac, just to keep it simple. We have a lot of Michaels on our team. And I have been, just a quick background, I've been in software for 20 plus years now, primarily in ERP, CRM, HR tech. Most recently, we saw a big gap in HR tech, and we saw how we could bring behavioral science together with some of the latest technologies that we'll talk about a little bit today. And that is what brought 3iEIO to market. So as we alluded to earlier, we've been a part of the Hedera network for a number of years now, and we intentionally chose Hedera. So we'll get into some more details around that later, but excited to be here.
Thanks, Mac. Very excited to have you and looking forward to learning more about your team and what you guys have built and, all those fun things. Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure thing. So I'm probably been in crypto blockchain for longer than most people would consider healthy. I started out in the mining space back in 2012, back when that was a far more profitable endeavor, I would say. It's a very tough competition nowadays, but I did that for several years as kind of one of the first crypto consultants in the Dallas area. And then eventually I moved into more of the software consulting realm, worked on a lot of blockchain projects for both some startups and corporations. I worked at Toyota, Thomson Reuters, and Verizon, all for different stints of time working on POCs and production level blockchain projects. And Mac and I actually got together at the first Hedera hackathon in 2018, gave this project a try. We got some good feedback there, but didn't quite make it to the final rounds. But this last round in Hedera 20, we really pulled it off, and happy to see we got third place.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the blockchain scene in Dallas, which I'm sure we can talk about more. But you alluded to this. You joined us as a project from the Hedera 18 hackathon, and most recently part of the Hedera 20 virtual hackathon, which just concluded. Would either of you like to talk a little bit about how you came to the Hedera community and got started?
I could take a quick stab at that.
Yeah.
So my last full-time role in the HR tech space was with a leading employee engagement recognition solution, and we sold that company. And I moved back up to Dallas from Austin, and started thinking about what my next endeavor was going to be. And I had stumbled across this company called Hedera Hashgraph. I don't own any crypto. I don't, I wasn't a big part of it. Heard all my friends talking about Bitcoin, and I was just like, yeah, that's great. Started learning about Hedera's, consensus algorithm and virtual voting and all of that. And I guess you can call it baby chick syndrome or whatever you want to call it. But I just was like, man, this is great. I am familiar with Gartner's hype cycle about how, distributed ledger technology is kind of in that trough of disillusionment, and we're waiting for those third and fourth generation solutions to take us on what Gartner calls the plane of enlightenment to mass market acceptance. And I firmly believe more and more each day that Hedera is that third and fourth DLT option. And so the rest was history. Early on in 18, we didn't quite know how the two were going to match up. But as the concept of decentralized identities became more of a reality and Hedera pushed that service, we were like, yeah, this is it. So here we are.
That's awesome. I'm very excited to have, a team with hands-on experience in decentralized identity, which we'll talk, much more in depth throughout this live stream. Michael, how was your experience at Hedera 18 and, subsequently at Hedera 20?
It was very different, I would say. I think the Hedera 2018, well, it was different for a lot of reasons. First of all, one was in person, one was virtual, one was 48 hours, and then this next one was 6 weeks. So just the way that the competition worked, the things we delivered, and then Hedera itself has changed a lot in between those two hackathons. I think the first time around, Hedera was still very new. The technology was still being developed. And for us, within the 48 hours, it kind of, I would say we got a lot done, but we didn't quite get as far as we really wanted to. But with the 6-week hackathon, it was a lot easier for us to knuckle down and really develop the ideas, I think, and flush them out a lot more. We had done some work in between the hackathons as far as ideating and working on other prototypes, but we still did pretty much everything from scratch as far as designs, development, even some of the ways that the use case was going to be used on Hedera. We even used new technology that's just come out, like the DITS SDK for decentralized identities. So with all that combined, we came out with a really project that we're all really proud of, and hats off to Anish, Luis, and Justin, who are also on the team, and really brought it all together.
That's really great to hear. And, we loved to see projects with us 2 years ago at Hedera 18 and sticking around to Hedera 20. So Mac, do you want to tell us, what is 3IEIO? What did you manage to build during the 6 weeks?
Yeah, I would love to tell you that. So again, I talked about employee recognition, employee engagement software. That's a very hot topic in HR, has been for years. All the cliches of people are our greatest asset and culture trump strategies that we've said for years are finally coming true. HR is being looked at more as a profit center for companies than a cost center. It's all about the people. And especially now in this post-COVID world where we have to adapt to these work from anywhere, how do you keep that connective tissue of culture of people engaged, having line of sight and working together, collaborating, is the big question. And so what we decided to build, having solutions that allow for people to give each other recognition, even meaningful recognition for a job well done that aligns to a company's core values, that's not really earth-shattering. There's a lot of solutions out there that do that. But what we found is that those are usually flashes in the pan, so to speak. People will engage with them when they're new, and then they'll kind of wither out. And I think the reason why is because there's no real intrinsic benefit for the individual. So we thought, man, how cool would it be If all this great cultural data of the way you see the world from a values and skill set standpoint, how you recognize the world around you and how the world recognizes you, if that data could be aggregated and it stays with the employee for life, regardless of what employer has a license to a software solution. That's what DID helps us with. It also helps us enable customers and other people that you might engage with in the workplace day in and day out to give recognition and allow that to be considered. So yeah, there's employee engagement surveys and things like that. But I always say the best photographs are the ones that are candid, the ones where the subjects don't know they're getting their picture taken, because otherwise they're just showing their best selves. But if you really want a single version of raw truth, just do your work. Just do what you normally would do. Let people engage and interact with each other, and you can still get those cultural insights that you want. Employee surveys are good for certain things, but not for real cultural insights. So I think that's what we've built, and DID really helps us take it, several steps further.
This is really, really interesting. So what do you, could you give us an example of the employee engagements that you're talking about? Or it might be even more helpful to just dive straight into a little demo of your platform, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, if I can go ahead and share my screen.
You should be able to, but if you aren't, we can see if we can get our IT support in here.
Okay. Let me know if you guys, when you guys can see my screen here.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So here is the, the alpha, if you will, that we built. This is an example of an activity feed. If I click on the profile here and view this user's profile, of course, there will be pictures and other pretty stuff here. But the idea is that I am an employee that's now associated with this company, and I can now search for members or my teammates that are also associated with this company. So we use semantic search. I can just start typing a name will pop up. Let's say Anish stayed late to help me help a customer. And Anish is a new employee. He just started a few days ago at Wingstop. It's a fast food wings place here that's popular down in Dallas, and he's a fry cook. But he
it's a good shout out to Anish, who is one of the engineers on your team.
Yeah,
I'm sure he appreciates the post hoc recognition.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Sorry, Anish. But anyway, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. But he really demonstrated teamwork because he stayed late to help. It was a game on, and he stayed late to get this big order out. And so he demonstrated some fry cook ninja stuff. I don't know. I can put in some skill sets here and type in a nice message that makes it personal, and blah, blah, blah. And then I can post this, and immediately this gets posted to the feed. Now imagine this happening day in and day out, and this feed becomes real world examples of how my company's core values are being lived out. Anish feels good because he recognizes that his work is meaningful. It's making an impact toward the vision of the company. And then now check this out. Imagine the CEO of Wingstop is on a flight back to Dallas, and he or she decides to flip through and see what the company's up to, and sees Anish's recognition, and then decides to like it and comment on it. And then Anish gets that push notification that the CEO of Wingstop also recognized his job well done. He's going to think twice when Buffalo Wild Wings offers him an extra $1.50 per hour to come and work for them, because, hey, at Wingstop, his work is appreciated, he gets recognized, and he has that line of sight. Not only that, and I'll let Michael Lewellen get into this, but this little link here takes us to Dragonglass, which actually shows the finality of that recognition happening here. So this actually gets pushed on Ledger, and it stays with Anish's digital signature for life. He can do what he wants with it. And so think about LinkedIn, where people can go there onto your profile and endorse you for skills and certain things. Well, that's all arbitrary and who the hell knows what's really happening there. This is a way that you can actually derive real world engagements from your peers, from your customers, people you interact with, where you're getting called out meaningfully for skills and values that you demonstrate.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You have we have Paul Madsen in the YouTube chat, who's one of the heads of technology and product at Hedera, who's very interested in the DI space, and he called these self-sovereign endorsements, which is super interesting. A lot of people are familiar with self-sovereign identities and digital representations that can never be taken away from you, that are permanent and immutable. And the idea of taking this type of employment history and recognition and putting those in a similarly self-sovereign and irrevocable ways super interesting.
I won't get too philosophical, but I do think this is important to share, that this seems pretty trivial of like, well, who cares about recognition? Well, when it's meaningful recognition and values that are aligned to the company's core values and skill sets that are aligned to your function and your role are being called out, the aggregate of that data actually tells a really interesting story. The way the world recognizes you in a meaningful way could be indicative of your strengths. And absence of recognition could be indicative of areas of improvement. If you have career pathing goals or aspirations, AI can take over and start to hint off to you what trainings and might be helpful for you that are available to you. Mentors that embody certain values and skill sets that work with you might be helpful for you to to engage with. And then conversely, the recognition that you give outward to the world might be indicative of your intrinsic motivators, what inspires and motivates you. Because if you consistently recognize these values and these skill sets, then that could be a view into how you see the world and what really makes you tick. So it actually gives really good, insightful cultural information. And the other thing is, when it comes to DID, there's all these grandiose ideas of saying one day you won't need bank accounts or social security numbers or things like that. Well, that's all great. But right now we chose this as a go-to-market strategy for DID because this is actually a really neat use case that isn't highly regulated. And so people can get comfortable with the DID profile concept. And as those things like education credentials, licensure, certifications become more prevalent and mass market accepted, we're already there. We could look back and have 500,000 to 1 million users on our platform already comfortable with the DID concept.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I think as more and more people become aware of what the benefits of decentralized identity are, they want to really expand into other ways that you can create things like engagements in the same type of model. Michael Lewellen, do you want to tell us a little bit about how this whole system's architected? Where does Hedera fit into the picture of what you're building?
Absolutely. And also shout out to Paul for giving us a mentor session during the hackathon, because that was very helpful to understand how the DID SDK was set up, and gave us some insight on how we wanted to wrap things up in terms of making sure we made full use of it and we were in line with whatever came next. Because it had just come out. Like, we were already planning to use DID for the hackathon, and then this thing, we found it like a week or two before, and we're like, oh wow, that was easy. So yeah, hats off to the team that put together that SDK. So let me share my screen and I can walk through a little bit more on how that architecture is set up. So
yeah, that's great. I'm sure Paul appreciates the shout out, and also shout out to the Swisscom blockchain team who helped us with the specification and implementation and all that fun stuff on the development side.
Awesome. All right. So I'll get right into it and kind of break down some of the terms we were just discussing. So when it comes to how we're using Hedera and the DID SDK, there's really 3 terms that come in. It's basically the identity, which is represented by a DID, which is this decentralized identifier. It's a way to identify people, companies, even computers or systems, anything that is going to need to be uniquely identified. And then after that, we have recognitions in our system, which from the DID language is just considered to be a verified credential. It's a way to say this identity has this credential. So for example, I could say Mac is the CEO of 3AEIO. That would be a credential that could be issued to him from a party that we would trust. And that could be done through the state, which is issuing him a license to run the company. It could be issued by an individual who's just recognizing him as the CEO of a company. And so you could even have it done through what I would say is kind of like a organic or grassroots growth, you could almost say, in terms of someone could be identified as CEO simply because so many people have recognized him as CEO. And that itself is an identity that you can eventually learn to trust. And then last of all, the Hedera consensus service, which was the main way that we are actually sharing and verifying both these decentralized identifiers and verified credentials on a trusted common channel. And the idea is that this channel is accessible to not just the HR provider that employee might be working for or working at, but anyone else that they might work for in the future. So that's why our identities are accessible outside of just one silo. And then all of this is being done with the DID SDK, which is, there's a GitHub link if you ever want to check it out. So if you look up just Hedera DID SDK, you should be able to find the GitHub. So we're using that, and it has a very specific method for using Hedera with DID. So we are compatible. If any other Hedera application wanted to use decentralized identities, they could plug into ours as long as they follow the same specifications. So it's another way we make sure we're kind of in line with the standards of the industry, or specifically the Hedera ecosystem.
Yeah, very, very exciting. I know Hedera actually got those standards from the W3C's decentralized identity standards. So it's a really nice model where you can be interoperable, not just between applications on Hedera, but potentially interoperable with any other decentralized identity solution or provider, which is super interesting. And we will definitely put the link to that decentralized identity SDK in the YouTube chat and or description of this video. But this is super interesting.
Sweet.
So, it's clear on my end, you're using decentralized identity on Hedera. All these recognitions are verifiable credentials, to use the industry terms. What does the rest of your application architecture look like? Is it super custom? Is it just like a standard React website? What did you choose to implement? And how did the constraints of the 6-week virtual hackathon impact that decision?
Glad you asked. So this is our architecture from a high level. So we did end up using Google Cloud simply because that's what our team is most comfortable with, and we've worked with it before.
For those watching, I did not know that he had the slide prepped next, so that was just impressive.
Oh yeah, no, we hats off to Luis for making the original version for this. I just ended up prettying it up. But basically the way we built this is we built it as a typical web stack, but with an additional layer where Hedera consensus service comes in. So you kind of have this top layer where you have a React front end. That's a typical React app that you just saw earlier. And users can interact with this. They can submit recognitions. They can view them. And then that's behind a reverse proxy running Nginx. So that's just a way to be as a pass-through between the front end and back end. Our back end is running with Kubernetes on Google Cloud. And then we have a MongoDB database that stores all of the personal identifiable information and any data that we don't put on Hedera consensus service. So most of the critical data, especially the data that would, an employer would be concerned about sharing, we keep that internal. And so all of these pieces look pretty standard to anyone who's built a web application, but the part that is unique is where we have actually set up a client microservice that is connected to the Hedera ecosystem through the DID SDK, which we have running as a separate Java application in a container. And then through that, we are able to both publish messages and listen for the responses on the Hedera consensus service, which is then connected to the Hedera network itself. And so for any user that signs up for 3AIO, they will automatically have an identity generated for them on Hedera consensus service. And then any recognition you see posted from an identity to another will also be posted on Hedera as a recognition. And just like Max showed you before, and I can show you really quickly, this is a recognition I sent while Mac was speaking, looking good on the Hedera live stream. And then you can go then to the Dragon class API.
How do I know that you sent that while he was on the live stream and not, a couple hours ago?
Okay, let's see here. There we go. Now it loaded. Yes, we do have a timestamp. Good old timestamps. So we do have, and actually you can see the one that he posted and the one I posted. So this I actually posted first at 7:12, and then he posted another one for Anish at around 7:13. So, and then we can look at the transaction itself. Let's give it a second. It takes, Dragon class will take a little bit to load the details for that transaction. I think it's actually asking Hedera. There we go. Now we have it. So we do have the topic ID, which is unique to 3IO. And then we'll actually have this transaction hash and the message, which is unique to the hash of the data. And basically this message can be uniquely identified to this recognition. So that data, so basically if you were going to question, hey, is this recognition real? Did you actually do this? In our database, we have this transaction link here, just transaction hash to link those two together. So if an employee ever left, they could take this data with them, as well as any individual data that the employer was comfortable letting go. And so they can still have a way to uniquely identify that this came from a user. And the other benefit of this is that if a user is, like, let's say that the user left, but the employer doesn't want to reveal anything else about what went on beyond that, what that specific user got in recognitions. For example, let's say that it would break my heart, but Anish leaves the company. Then what would happen is that he would have all these recognitions that Mac has been sending him, but you wouldn't actually see Mac's information. You wouldn't see anything about Mac other than you knew he was a real user in this company that provided this recognition to Anish. And you could also include some information about Mac, like his name, whatever the employer would feel comfortable with, but we can customize it so that there is a level of security for the employers to know that their data isn't just walking out the door, but for the individual user, they still get to keep those unique recognitions that can benefit them in future careers and opportunities.
Really interesting. Can we get a little insight into what these raw transactions look like? Like what are you actually sending over the wire to Hedera?
Let's take a look. So we actually have this, which is set up along the lines of how the DID SDK is supposed to work. And so you have the signatures that were signed on this transaction. You have account details that relate to essentially the account ID for where it is in Hedera, as well as the node that submitted it, transaction fees. These are kind of standard stuff. Let me see if I can find the really interesting parts.
I think my question was to get to this hexadecimal formatted message here, which kind of was just to give viewers the sense of we're not exposing any of your personal information, and it's really up to the application to interpret this and process this however it wants.
Yes, I see. Oh, yeah, so bad. This, like, you notice when you're looking in here, like, there's no way to tell who this person is necessarily or what's going on, but like this transaction is basically a unique hash of all the data that is on this platform. And so if you basically, the critical data is still in that MongoDB database, the parts that we wouldn't necessarily want to walk out the door, but you can always link it to what we have on Hedera. And if you wanted to transfer data between companies or between individuals, you can do so without worrying about the data potentially being corrupted. If Anish walked out and then tried to modify his credentials to say he got recognitions that he didn't, he wouldn't be able to show the relevant transactions for them. There would be nothing that could match up. So it's a way to ensure that you always are getting real recognitions if you're trying to look at someone's profile and see if their reputation is real.
Yeah, it's a super interesting model that traditional HR employee engagement platforms just could never reproduce. We actually have a question in the chat, and I think this one's probably best for Mac over here. Someone asked, can you be marked for life on the ledger for just having a bad day? What happens in 3IEIO to potentially negative endorsements or, bad comments from coworkers?
So it's not possible. So there are no negative endorsements, negative recognition. That's part of the behavioral science in parenting, as well as in employee morale. And the way that this works is it doesn't need to be, nor should it be balanced out with the negative feedback. It really is just recognition of a job well done that's meaningful, meaning that it aligns to a value of your tribe, of your company, a core value, and an optional skill set or two. That's just it's kind of moot. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. And I'll add on to the, it's, if someone really wanted to try and, post a bad recognition about someone, even though the obviously the categories we give them give no way to like hurt the data behind someone's identity or reputation. If they try to just put in like bad comments about a person, that wouldn't be put on chain beyond just the hash of that. And if the employer or even the employee wanted, they could potentially just remove that from their profile, depending on what settings they wanted to have set up, and that would effectively not impact them at all. So you still have the ability to police. As an employer, you have the ability to police what goes on inside of your ecosystem in terms of just bad actors or poor messaging. So you still have that because the hash, even if the hash is there, it's not going to hurt anyone because there's no way to reverse it and get the original result without the original data.
Right. And jerk can't be a skill set that you can be called out for either.
Yeah, maybe some radical candor-based workplaces will request you to add that in the future. We'll see what happens. We actually had another question in the chat around, can it be abused in some way? For instance, two people colluding to give each other great endorsements for the sake of building their reputation.
So yes, in my experience of selling a few thousand of these applications, very similar to this in some of my last roles, it happens very, very rarely. But what we are building in is two safeguards essentially in the application layer, if you will. By the way, I'm not technical, so if I'm using these terms incorrectly, I'm sorry.
We'll have Michael Lewellen hop in there and try to correct you.
I'll keep an eye out.
That's why you're such a good team of mics.
So there's free form commenting available on the activity feed. If there's anything offensive in there, it can be flagged. If it's flagged once, an admin gets alerted. If it's flagged twice, it's immediately removed from the feed until an admin can address it. There is also the ability, I don't know why anybody would waste time doing this because there's very little reward, but if two people decided to just send each other recognition and props back and forth all day long, there is a nefarious activity report, again, an alert that's built in to say that will show, hey, these two users have been sending an odd amount, an outlier amount of recognition to one another. So again, an admin would be alerted and they can deal with that internally. But those things happen very rarely in the tens of thousands of users that I've licensed software similar to this to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess one of the benefits of having it logged in a self-sovereign, decentralized model is that you could prove to potential future employees that those verifiable credentials that they've granted in the past shouldn't be weighted as heavily as other people, right? Like if you're granting 10,000 different people endorsements, that does not mean as much as someone who only grants 10 or 100 potentially. So I can see a lot of different ways to kind of weight the model and the importance that you're giving to some of these engagements or verifications. So that's really interesting. I really like the demo. How did you find this in the hackathon? Like, did it take you all 6 weeks? Is it something you just put together in a weekend? How was your team's experience? I know it wasn't just you, Michael.
No. In fact, I would say I was really working a lot on the higher levels. It was definitely Anish and Luis that did a lot of the very heavy coding and put together what I would say is a very, very clean repo. We even put in some nice documentation because we knew that Dr. Baird likes to take a peek, and feel very proud about the fact that we got it built, but it was definitely a grind. We also had a lot of back and forth between what design and development was doing, because we wanted to make sure that the design it looked good, it was usable to someone who just jumped onto the platform because we wanted a live demo, but we also wanted to make sure it was doable within the time that development needed. So there was definitely a big crunch between about halfway through. We wanted to get all the designs done so development could also get that done. So we were going at it the whole time. And I would say up until the date, we were still doing some fine tuning just to make sure that everything was going to look good before the final date.
That's super interesting. I've been very impressed with all the different projects that came out of Hedera 20. What would you say was the biggest challenge of the task or the hackathon, or using the new DID SDK?
I think and this is something that our backend developer Anish could actually speak more to, but there were some challenges using the data SDK just because I think it was a bit newer than the main Hedera SDK, which it actually does. It has a dependency on, but mainly we were trying to get it to run in a microservice to work with our application within a container, and there were just some difficulties in getting that to work because both it was a little bit new. And it just took some time to understand how it worked to make sure that we knew it could work with our application reliably and the transactions would always go through no matter what. So we did get it to that point, but I would say that was probably the trickiest thing in terms of engineering. Everything else was just a matter of getting as much as we could done in a good quality way with enough time. Everything else was just a matter of planning it well so we had enough time to get it done in terms of converting designs into actual code and front-end work.
Yeah, super interesting. Mac, what was the most difficult part on your end as the man with the vision?
Conveying that, articulating that vision to a bunch of these techies. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that hard. That is very difficult because, this is combining, relatively new technologies with a relatively new concept. So it can get very tricky to articulate what 3IEIO is and the importance and the impact that it actually has and why it's better than trying to do this with things like surveys and how it really complements and helps performance reviews. We're doing all these things in today's world that are just ancient and just archaic and crap. But it's just fascinating how we're still doing, I get it. We're still doing performance review stuff and surveys because they're arguably more data centric and easy to employ, but but then it doesn't work and we wonder why. So 3IEIO is great for that. It allows you to just do what you do. And then, the results that we want are just that. They're the results, they're the byproduct of employing this tool. So, but then to articulate that was very difficult. So we can actually write code to build it and make it all come together. But we did. It's great. Now it's just a matter of making it look pretty.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's great to see the progress that you've made over the past 6 months or 6 weeks, and all the engineering effort behind it. So where is 3IEIO at right now, and what are you currently working on?
Man, I'm currently working with a lot of potential early adopting customers. Some of them I'm probably not at liberty to mention who they are. Some of them I can. And so, we've got some expressed interest from some very notable brands. We intentionally are looking for larger organizations because I think the more people that are using this in a deployment, the more validating it is, the more we're going to learn on where things break, so we can get that that feedback, that qualitative feedback back to Michael and the team, so we can continue to iterate and build the product and improve it. So there's a lot of that going on. And I have also started to raise capital. I wanted to bootstrap this as long as possible. And we've been successful in doing that, but now I think we're at an inflection point where it makes sense to raise some capital. So we're starting that process. But yeah, the next few months are going to continue to get crazier and crazier. Paid my attorneys. We've got all of our documentation and agreements ready to go, so we can actually license this thing. They're just finishing up the ULO right now, the user license agreements, but there's a lot going on. But stay tuned. Follow us on LinkedIn for the shameless plug, our company page, because I put all the updates there. I'm an avid LinkedIn user, and if you want to stay abreast of what we're doing, that's definitely one place. And there's some communities that we're now getting involved with in the Hedera ecosystem too. So it'll all be shared there.
That's really awesome. Definitely recommend people in the YouTube watching this live stream or the replay to follow you on LinkedIn, follow the 3IEIO team, and stay updated on the cool things that they're building. that makes a lot of sense for what you're focused on over the next few weeks or months. Where do you hope to be in a couple of years from now? Like, what is the grand vision for how Hedera and decentralized identity can impact employee engagement?
Yeah, so I am confident that we will be a force to be reckoned with as far as an employee engagement and recognition solution. I think that's actually going to be the easy part. That's a hot topic right now. A lot of companies, especially in this post-COVID world, are looking for just simple solutions that they can employ and people can adopt. If people don't use the damn software, it's worthless. And so that's part of this design. You saw it. It's very simple and straightforward. We are a master of one, not trying to be a jack of all trades and build in surveying and performance management and all these other things where it's just like, oh, great. I mean, you guys all know you're an employee, right? It's just another tool that you're obligated to use for the business and you really don't care. So adoption falls. If it's something simple and easy to use and you're getting a direct benefit, you, the individual, this is an investment the company actually made in you, the person. Oh, okay, maybe you'll give it a shot. And it's pretty simple. I'm just going to give my buddies recognition for a job well done. So I think that's going to be pretty easy for us to take to market with that messaging. We've already seen some demand. Then down the road, as DID, decentralized identifications, becomes more prevalent, and there's these other adjacent use cases of where a lot of universities are now offering digital education credentials. Or certifications and those sorts of things. Well, guess what? You guys already have a DID profile, and we will be ready to handle that as well. There's something I want to share, but I can't right now. That's really big news on how, the grand vision for 3IEIO looking ahead, maybe 5+ years from now, is pretty exciting.
That's really great to hear. I can definitely imagine a future where you have verifiable credentials for your employment history, for your education history, for the recognition that you got at all of those various places, being like a key component of your resume, that when you apply to new jobs, you send them your account on a distributed ledger, your decentralized identity, and they can actually check and make sure in real time that you're not lying about who you are, what you've done, or what people have said about you. So that's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
We did have one more question in the chat here. I'll answer the first part of it, then see if you have any insights to add. Someone asked, how does the token HBAR fit into this? Would employers give the employees a bonus in HBAR or something like that? So I'll just say, from our end, every transaction that you saw that's going on Hedera, every time that they're logging data with the Hedera consensus service, creating a new decentralized identity, or giving someone a new verifiable credential, every single one of those transactions has a tiny, tiny fee in HBAR, our native cryptocurrency, that is attached to it. So it's under a penny, way under a penny, for any time they want to log data immutably to this public network. But Mac or Michael, would you like to chime in on different types of incentive mechanisms or tokenization that you could see added to this?
Yeah, so that's part of what I can't really speak to right here and now. But yes, so there are some employee engagement solutions out there that have points-based systems, and these are arbitrary points that customers of these software solutions can put money into an escrow account, and then they agree upon a translation of a point equals 1 US penny. And then they do all these weird things with rewards. It works. It's clunky. Digital currency takes away, makes that whole thing a lot better. And yes, there are other things with regard to if you think of like variable income structures down the road, that where digital currency, as it becomes more accepted in the market, can be used. So the answer is yes. We absolutely have plans to build the cryptocurrency, digital currency services on this. It's just not time to do that yet. And Michael, I think we did. One of the reasons why we chose Hedera had to do with some of their, super low transaction fees, right? On that side, maybe you want to speak to that, because that is another reason we forgot to mention.
Yeah, and that was actually, I think it actually even gets more into not just the transaction fees, but just the architecture in general. Because I've worked on Ethereum projects, and I would say there's always going to be areas where I think Ethereum could be maybe a better choice than Hedera. But I think the big benefit to Hedera is the fact that you have a very accessible API with the Hedera consensus service. You have the ability to essentially say, like, I don't want to worry about writing smart contracts or really doing anything that feels like custom blockchain development. To a developer working with this platform, it feels like you're just writing data to an API like you would to potentially a Kafka stream and just getting responses back. And so it's a lot more streamlined. It's a lot easier to control. In terms of our users, like, they might not know they're using blockchain at all, or DLT or anything like that. And that's really the ideal scenario. We'd prefer to get them warmed up before we throw things like cryptocurrency and HBAR and transactions at them. So this can go, and we made it a very tiny button in the top right. So if they want to play with it, they can. But the idea is we get them in, and then as they become more familiar with it, they feel comfortable with the platform, then we introduce those features like HBAR rewards, or maybe more custom features relating to how the consensus service stores those transactions. There's a lot more there, but we wanted to make sure that any user that came in wouldn't feel intimidated by that sort of thing, because that is what I've seen in projects in the past. If you're trying to use like MetaMask or something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. User experience in blockchain is definitely something that if you don't keep it top of mind and prioritize, providing a good experience, it's going to end pretty badly. It's going to be hard to get adoption. So it's really great to see that you have this really easy solution that just about any employer or employee would be able to grasp pretty easily without knowing what their seed phrases are and how to export their private keys and transfer HBAR from Binance or wherever they're getting it. So that's really, really exciting to hear. I will just, pause here and say this has been awesome. I'm really excited about what you're building, and I really appreciate your time and having you on the live stream. If anyone has questions for myself or the 3IEIO team, please put them in the chat, and we'll stay around for at least another 5 or 10 minutes here to answer any outstanding questions. But Michael, Mac, is there anything else that you would like to share with our community, or ways that people can stay in touch with you? I know you mentioned LinkedIn already.
Well, listen, I mean, I'm open to emails. If you guys want to shoot me an email, it's just mac@3ie.io. That's MAC at the number 3, the letter I, the letter E.io. Feel free to shoot me a note. I am on LinkedIn pretty much all the time, so feel free to shoot me an invite there. We can connect our personal profiles. But yeah, definitely follow the 3IEIO company page. We started doing some of our own webinars as well that we're going to do on a monthly basis. They're more tailored for the business side of things, the positive business outcomes and the use cases. So these would be, for the HR folks and the C-suites of companies to get a feel for what this is and what's the real benefit. So they're more tailored for that. We're already up to 127 registrants for our first one. So these seem like they're going to be pretty popular. The only other thing I would like to say is this. Some of you might think this is like total brown nosing, or just because we're in this audience of Hedera Hashgraph. But honestly, I've drank the Kool-Aid. I believe in it. I even have arguments with Michael Lewellen sometimes when we talk about what we're doing and we use the term blockchain. It's not blockchain. That's beautiful to me. It's not blocks on chain.
Arguments. I would say semantics.
Semantics, yeah. So, but I get offended. It's like, no, we are 4th generation DLT, man. This is Hashgraph, and there is reason and benefit for that. So I'm very proud to have chosen Hedera as a partner and to build this on, because I honestly don't believe that what I call 1st and 2nd generation DLT platforms would support us in the short or the long term. That is the truth. Shame me if you want, accuse me of brown nosing if you want. I don't care. That's where we're at, and I'm proud to be here. So yeah, thanks. Shout out to Hedera in general, honestly.
Yeah, we really appreciate you and sticking around our community for so long, all the way from Hedera 18 before our test network and mainnet went live. Michael, how can people find you? How can people stay in touch if they want to ask you questions? I think you're, and I could be mistaken, involved in the Texas Blockchain Council, if you want to plug that at all too.
Yes, I'll give a quick plug to that. So that's actually a great another place where I get to see Hedera at work as well. That is a new organization that we started by Lee Bratcher. I think it was earlier this year. It really has gone live in the last couple of weeks, but it's been in the works for months. And that's really an initiative to be an education organization for blockchain and DLT technology in Texas. And so we're very happy to see that Hedera is one of the first that stepped up to be one of the strategic partners for that organization. And really our main goal is to make sure that the legislation in the next Texas session focuses on making sure there's a friendly state for blockchain. We're really going for kind of the Wyoming model of making sure that there's regulations to protect against bad actors, but there's also clarity so that companies that want to do good work like ourselves, like Hedera, don't have any serious barriers in the way just because of something that's archaic or just regulations that haven't really been updated. So that's our main focus there. And then as far as anyone getting in touch with me, I've actually got a talk coming up for just basically, I've been doing a blockchain series and just blockchain tech in general. And if anyone is interested, there is a talk I'm doing next week on Wednesday for the rise of crypto assets. So just going over how crypto assets can be used on any platform, including Hedera, and I think a lot of the potential benefits for that. And I know that Hedera's done a lot of interesting talks. I think you yourself on tokenization, so that's kind of where you could see some of those use cases work from a financial perspective.
Yeah, very excited about all the blockchain efforts going underway in Texas. Very excited that Hedera is a part of them. We're very proud to be based outside of the Dallas area. And so really looking forward to seeing how that legislative environment and council kind of evolved in the state. So we will put links to both the 3iEIO webinar and ways to get in touch with them in the description of this video for anyone who comes back to watch it in the future. But I just wanted to thank you all so much for joining us today on the Hedera Virtual Meetup. A big thank you to Mac and Michael and the rest of the 3iEIO team for all of their hard work. And we really look forward to seeing them improve and build unique solutions in the HR and employee engagement space. So with that, thank you all, and I hope to see you on the next virtual meetup.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
day.
Thank you.
Be cool.